I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Jeff Bliss, my co-host from KSFO. Jeff, a very good evening to you.
Good evening to you, John.
Jeff, we're keen on the vote from last night, but we're also keen on surprises from the Obama administration today. And I have a surprise for our first guest. We're joined by Thaddeus McCotter, 11th Michigan, joining us from his home because the Congress was allowed to go home after being obliged to return suddenly. Congressman, a very good evening to you, Thaddeus.
Good evening to you, John.
Now, here's your surprise. Jeff, you already know what it is. This is the Obama administration to distribute $3 billion to help unemployed keep homes. This is the headline on the Hill. And, Thaddeus, you will be delighted to hear that the Obama administration is taking $3 billion from the Troubled Asset Relief Program, the $700 billion TARP, and is distributing it to the unemployed, if they qualify, the hardest hit states. California will get $476 million. Watch it go by you, Jeff, out there.
Yeah, I just saw it go by the window.
Florida will get $239. Illinois will get $166. Ohio will get $149. Sorry, Thaddeus, they didn't mention Michigan, but I guess they figure that's going Republican, so they're not going to bribe you. Now, what's your response, Congressman, to that TARP money still being used by the political hacks to buy votes?
Well, John, as we talked about at the time, this was precisely one of the concerns we had. Other than the socialization of the bank's losses, we were very concerned that that catch-all phrase would be used for exactly what the Democrats are trying to do, which is to take the TARP money without legislative authorization in this specific instance and use the broad authorization they got under the original bill to try to, let's be honest, to try to bring up and curry favor with particular groups across the country in targeted areas. And it's, to us, that's why the TARP should have been ended and should never have been passed in the first place.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Thaddeus, have we seen anything from the first round of TARP? Did it move the political needle at all? And are pollsters talking about this one at all? Are they saying this is going to have any effect, or is it just going to be throwing money out the window again?
Well, it's part of their larger operations that they're trying to engage in. It's why we went back this week to do the $26 billion to the states. Look, the Democrats continue to labor under the belief that the only institution in the world that doesn't have to restructure for the age of globalization is the federal government. And so what they're doing is they're creating a government bubble. They're trying to act as if this is 1955, and they do not yet realize that the federal government not only has the inability to pay our debts, it's continuing to damage the productivity necessary to meet the bills that they're incurring.
And this $3 billion, we don't expect it to actually help anybody, but it's a pretty good headline. Is this what you left behind in Washington? The Obama administration will just spend everything it can find in all of the drawers, in all of the back pockets. It will just keep spending until it's stopped. Is that your impression, Congressman?
Well, as you know, John, when the Republican majority ran out of vision, ran out of ideas, they relied on earmarks and spending to try to perpetuate themselves. What I think is so absolutely amazing is how quickly the Democrats have devolved into that status of trying to spend their way back into a majority.
We now go to the other item, Jeff, that we love, which is Harry Reid. Jeff, when Jeff was in Las Vegas, he told me that he couldn't find any towels. You had to go to the towel closet yourself, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I was reduced to going to the towel closet and serving myself.
There's a jobless problem, I hear, in Nevada. There's a housing problem here in Nevada. Well, there's also a problem that their majority leader, their senior senator today, Thaddeus, issued a remark that actually stunned everybody listening to it. I paraphrase it only because I don't want to go into the details, but what he said was, this is Harry Reid, the majority leader of the United States Senate. He said that he cannot imagine that anyone of Hispanic heritage would ever be a Republican. How do you respond, Thaddeus?
My Mexican-American wife can't understand how anybody could vote for Harry Reid.
Harry Reid is making remarks that also stunned people. Jeff, I hear that the man running for governor is Harry Reid's son. Is that right?
Yes, it is, on the Democratic side.
And on the Republican side, there's a fellow named Brian Sandoval who holds a 10-point lead. Jeff, can we be suspicious of the fact that Brian Sandoval is Hispanic heritage?
I think just a little bit. I think we can play cynics on this one.
And so, Congressman, how do we conclude this majority leader's statement? Is this a level of statesmanship that you're used to in Washington now?
Oh, I love your dry wit, John. I think that we can all agree, you, I, and Jeff, that this is a very desperate politician trying to use every trick in the book to try to mask his shoddy record to try to change the public's opinion by throwing shiny balls out there for people to chase around. And the reality is, if he had any concept of what's happening in the country right now, he'd be trying to address the issues. But unlike so many of his Democratic colleagues, their answer of more government spending, more taxes, less employment, is not a very attractive agenda for the American people. So he's just going to continue to do these types of things because what he wants to do to the country doesn't want done to it.
Jeff, does Harry Reid making, what you'd have to say is childish remarks like this, does it have any measure in California? Is California listening to the kind of tribal foolishness that he's participating in?
I think when folks here in California hear it, they scratch their head and they say, boy, what used to pass as California behavior has now moved to another state to the east. They find it hard to believe that this is what he's going for. This is what he's going to use as his platform for the arguments. But, other thing I wanted to add about his son Rory that's running. Rory's made it very clear that he's going to try to stay away from the Harry Reid name as much as possible. You don't really see Rory Reid on any campaign signs in Nevada. They all say, Rory. There's no Reid at all.
Now I want to turn to that $26 billion bailout package. Congressman, what was that about? Why were you obliged to return to Washington? What was the explanation?
Well, again, John, what we saw with the $1 trillion stimulus, I call it $1 trillion because we have to pay the interest on it, is that this is the Democrats trying to reinflate their government bubble. As you know, we had the housing bubble. The financial markets went into a mess. And so the Democrats wound up trying to replace it with a government bubble. And now that it's not working, what do? They have to try to bail out states. All this is a transfer of debt up. Still the same taxpayer is going to have to pay it. And what, again, they do not realize is that the restructuring that every family is going through, that every business entity is going through, that everyone in the private sector is going through, is going to come to the governmental institutions. They cannot continue to tax, spend, and borrow their way to try to perpetuate a system of governance, the industrial welfare state, that is no longer operative in our global age.
All right, there's an election in November. There is a new Congress in January. If the Republicans are in control of the House, what is the ambition of the Republican Party to reverse this trend, Thaddeus?
Well, obviously we started, John, by opposing the spending agenda that they have. We stopped the earmarks in the House. Earmarks were down 40%. I think 36% of that was related to Republicans refraining from them. But I think that the one thing I caution Republicans about is not to simply think that America is a bunch of statistics or that it's somehow simply a balanced budget and all of a sudden we've won in Afghanistan. America is a country, John, and it has some deep-seated generational challenges facing it. And what the American people want to see is America again being a special nation, inspiring the world by meeting our challenges. If we simply run around like a bunch of frustrated accountants, then we'll wind up in the same place we were before.
Jeff, your thoughts about this spending and spending. Is that what California wants? Is it responding to this spending as if it just a little bit more, it's going to turn us around?
No, and we know that it won't. Not only on the federal level, but the state level. And Thaddeus, I'm wondering, when they had the first stimulus, everybody thought to themselves here, there's another one that's coming down the road. That's just how these things work. Is there another one people are talking about that's over the horizon from here?
Well, they may not call it a stimulus, but if you look at what they're doing two things. One, every spending bill they put forward is considered a jobs bill. That's synonymous in their lexicon with stimulus. The other aspect that is disconcerting is they continue to talk about having the government lay the foundations of a new American economy. Now, with all due respect to the President, Speaker Pelosi, and Harry Reid, I don't know that those are the three people you want laying the foundations for anything. The American people laid the foundations for the most prosperous and equitable economy in human history, and I think we should leave it in their hands to fix it.
Thaddeus McCotter, 11th Michigan, Jeff Bliss of the Bliss Index.